early philosophers, Cicero, the Petrarch. I mean, I'm going back trying to get a little overview of what these people are, but it's amazing that it synchronizes what we're talking about tonight. That's why I just want to put that in there. But this book is really rich. I'm amazed at his. Didn't you say that McLuhan was the last scholar, or something like that?
I don't know if I'd say that, but he was very encyclopedic. Encyclopedic. Yes. He read everything.
Yes.
He read a lot.
Really, I mean, I'm going to study this. Because he is. I'm amazed at how he put all this together. He had to read a ton of information to put it together. A ton of information. I mean, I'm halfway through, and I'm going back now and outlining and getting overviews of all these people. And also, just by note, and then we'll go back, is that he notes in here, which blew me away, is that all the grammarians were alchemists.
Right. That's a key point.
That's why you have the grammar and the grimoire.
Yeah.
That's alchemical thought.
You know,
like
Don Thiel was, his main student in 1950 to 53, and he gave me a list of all the occult books they studied. It was like 150 titles. And most of them I'd never heard of before.
Also, just a real note, I'm reading the same time, because like when I read the Trivium, which is really thick, and I get a little, like my mind gets bogged, I actually am reading it side by side. I'm getting deeper into Don Thiel's book, Beyond the Word.
Good.
And it's amazing the parallels, the parallels of how that weaves in and out. Yes, you can see that, I can see that Don Thiel was McLuhan's top student. There's so many, and there's a lot of things that I see. I mean, he's talked about communication in Finnegan's Wake that I read this week was amazing about poets and prophecy. But anyway, we'll go back to the discussion. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so what you're reading, Marshall for his PhD, you could say wrapped up and explained the Gutenberg Galaxy with the trivia.
Yes.
So in that sense, he's the last scholar of the Gutenberg Galaxy. Then Don Thiel, knowing that, Marshall's work, then tries to figure out what kind of trivium, quadrivium, what are the seven liberal arts in relation to all this new media. He's trying to define a new trivium. So you're reading what McLuhan started to work with once he got rid of his PhD, and Thiel is around to sort of elaborate on what McLuhan was about in his words.
Yes, it's very good because he goes into movies. Thiel talks about movies and, the modern technology and computer.
And Thiel talks about modern media with pretty close to McLuhan's encyclopedic knowledge.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. And just the other day, Roxy held up the manuscript to Thiel's book. I think it's something about the ecology of sense, and which he wrote in the 80s, which these later books are updates of. He never got the one that Roxy's holding up to me through the Skype published. But it later got published in the later books, like the ones you're reading. But there's a good core of it in the ecology of sense that he did in the late 70s, early 80s. So, Roxy, I got to read. Now, see, look, Roxy, you held this up like 4 days ago and said, I got to read this, and our colleague here was reading it at the same time.
I'm fascinated with Don Thiel's book, Beyond the Word, and I started rereading it when I met you in October, and reading through it, I'm amazed that every 2 pages there's a pattern that I see. I mean, he has so many patterns woven into that book that it's mind-blowing. It's good for the mind to see those patterns. He talks a lot about
he learned pattern,
which is, right.
and that's the third Copernican revolution. He learned pattern recognition hanging out every day with McLuhan for 3 years.
Well, I see that in this trivium reading at those patterns, how McLuhan saw the patterns of how you see why his whole modern, what he was talking about is because of his dissertation, I see.
Yeah.
How his mind was just so opened up from looking at all those early scholars that it just opened him beyond most people at that time.
Right. What were you going to say, Roxy?
Yes, that In Understanding Me, Tom Wolfe said McLuhan owes everything to Harold Innis in his studies of exactly what was going on in Greece with the alphabet and writing. And then he applied the ideas of Innis to modern media. But actually McLuhan said, no, I saw everything in Lewis.
Lewis and Joyce. And he says Lewis in particular. Don Thiel says you go through Understanding Media, I think it is. Innis is mentioned once, and Joyce is mentioned, 20 times. When you look at the actual books, he mentions Joyce more than Innis. But McLuhan emphasized Innis to get accepted in academia. That led him to the Governor General's Award. So, and I talked to him about it after he died. He put on the Innis thing because Innis was the big guy in academia in the 40s and 50s in Toronto. So Marshall, it's like you can't be a new kind of physicist unless you say everything I do is a footnote to Einstein. If McLuhan said everything I do is a footnote to that Nazi Wyndham Lewis, oh man, he wouldn't get anywhere. So he put on the Innis thing as part of his communication strategy when he was trying to move into the mainstream and get a little more accepted.
Yeah, so maybe we could listen to something. I sent it you a...
yes, I have something. Here's
a tragedy?
Thought, right. No, I got some stuff here. Look at this. Don Thiel watched McLuhan interact with Innis on the campus. Who can say that? He watched. He saw the two men talking. And McLuhan would walk away from it saying, that guy didn't know nothing. You know what I mean? He didn't really have that. Don heard these statements so he knew that Joyce was the big thing, Joyce and Lewis, rather than Innis. So it's invaluable knowing Thiel and what he has to say.
He's amazing. It's an amazing book.
Yeah. Okay, so, Roxy, I'm going to open it up. I think we've been 10, 15 minutes. Let's just see if anybody has something to say while I look up the music. Do you want me to start with Rite of Spring or one of the early pieces?
No, I would like to... There is a tragedy in because Zappa did a lot of, in a way, in a modern way, the way Greek drama was presented as a cathartic ritual.
Right. All the time he's making fun of it, though. He's using the same elements, like the oratory and the music, and he's telling a story, like in Greek drama, but he's making a parody of that. Like yes, he's parodizing the very act he's doing. He's mocking the very act that he has to entertain people.
Talking about the myths of the gods, he's talking about very funny things. But maybe after that you could play the other video I'm going to send you late after you play that.
Hey, if you have the tragedy one
you
right
have
there,
to play the whole thing. You just like
right. But if you have the tragedy one, email it to me right now, and then I'll get it and I'll know it's the top one. But I'm looking through.
I just email it.
Yeah, just as you know where they are in your list. So here's the idea I got a little while ago. McLuhan, Ian says music is not, it's part of social order. It comes out of the world of limitation. So if sound represents non-physical, and non-physical is an unnecessary bath that people take, sound and music and non-physical go together. And the eye is what you see. And what you see, you have to be an expert to understand how to manipulate what you see. Otherwise, you're fooled by what you see. But the anti-environment to the eye is the warm bath of music or non-physical. So our symbol for non-physical would be sound. And Ian once told me at the very beginning, what is a symbol for non-physical? He said the ocean, the bay, the water you're looking at. So non-physical is water, is sound. And then you have physical is the eye. And you've got to get into a third position between the eye, which is not real, and the non-physical, the ear, which is just an emotional support structure because you're fallen. The third position, or the fourth position, is the ascended perspective. It's in the middle. It's the mouth, which is neither eye nor ear.
Wow.
So that was my little poem that I got from what you were saying, Roxy.
Yes, and
So,
another thing that was important in Greece, because they saw how each tone affected humans, and they could not explain why, that it could even make you sick or healthy,
right,
or move you to act in. So music was used really to program the people in different ways, to heal them or to make them go to war. Or
now you'll see in the story Roxy, in the 1969 album Uncle Meat, the story that comes with the album, it's all about modern science using advanced electron amplified sound to make people act in a controlled way. So he updates that and makes the meaning
yes.
of the message.
Yes, and also the Greek say the text serves to make clearer this ambiguous language of music, of sounds. The text,
the tactility
makes it more precise.
And delusional.
What is the program?
The tactile, the audio tactile, you can't tell if you're making the thing look at you or it's making you look at it or it's looking at you. That interplay, because there's no strong you to say, it's all me. Because you're in this interplay of before writing, then writing makes it more precise. That allowed a new space to be created, but it became a very big illusion. And when you get to the printing press, it's even a more imprinted illusion, and that leads to the Dark Ages, where people lose their sense of the non-physical or the acoustic, because they go visual in their minds. So, and then you get the tactile age. Okay, so I'm going to unmute people, and let's see what they have to say before we play the music.
All participants are now unmuted.
All open. Anybody have any statements? Nicholas, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, Bob, it's Michael here, Bob. When Roxy reminded us that music came before the alphabet, the pattern that came up for me was the muse, how the muse was there to inspire the poet. And the muse was something that the poet looked at through the eye as something so beautiful, it inspired words. And that kind of brought the pattern how music sound is the precursor to mortar. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Did you hear Roxy mention muse being the source for the word music? She said that.
Yes. That's where I got that.
Yes, and in the mysteries schools, they also have orgies and drugs and everything, and they even had vision of things, and they will be, for example, inspired to make a sculpture or something through the music. And music was at the time like a Zappa concert. It was participatory.
Right.
Everybody was having sex
in
OA, and dancing.
In OA, where they take gestures and grunts, that's Eskimo land or Aboriginal land, where they would have group dance rituals or gruntings and chantings to make nature respond. It's like ascended people knew their voice could make nature do whatever it wanted. They started to get fallen, so they lost their individual mouth power, so they would get together in a group and have group mouth power. Their crazy rituals and dances and chantings and making the rain come. You see what I mean? It got dispersed to a mass consciousness, which is the beginning of the fallen state. You're getting into social perception. But they're acting out the same power that an individual could have or should have.
From solo to choir, Bob.
The choir.
Yeah. A small point to make about Pythagoras was that his music pitch was, I believe, based on Hertz 432, as opposed to the modern standard pitch, which is 440, which was meant to distort people's just as Roxy said, tones could make you sick.
Yeah, I remember
or
hearing
act.
that. Yeah.
And I put the post on the Google Snatcher about it.
Well, listen to Chad. Chad, that's not a small point. LaRouche ran for president on that program. What would you do if you were president? Well, I'd shift the fucking thing to 440 or to 432, whatever it was. He made that a key point of his fucking political program because he knew how important music tuning was.
That's why we are studying with Pythagoras, because...
Now, why, you're making noises. Fucking Madeline. You're making fucking cooking, and why don't you mute so you don't interrupt us? If you're making environmental sounds, walking around, mute your fucking thing. You're making noises. I'm going to mute Madeline. I think it's coming from there. Yeah, go ahead, Roxy.
Yes, so that's why we are starting with Pythagoras, because all intonation in Western music is based on his model of...
his system, his visualization.
Yes, he was trying to translate what he called the true knowledge that one could get from mathematics in a way to contact or communicate with the divine. And
right, you
he
can
applied.
See that's what Ion's saying. Ion is always saying there's no patterns in nature. There's no laws. The frequencies are always changing, so don't get focused on one frequency. That's all ancient Aboriginal caveman reality. Once you start to get hypnotized by writing, you start making systems like Pythagoras did. Now, the only reason he was accepted is everybody else was getting affected by writing, so they thought, oh, this is a new landscape. Yeah, it's valuable. But if he had gone back to an Aboriginal culture that had no kind of writing, he would be considered an idiot. He was over there, not dancing, but writing something down. How non-tribal could you be? He'd be considered a retard. But it's only when the ground of writing comes in that he looks acceptable.
At the end, intonation is very important because it's been used, and really it's like the hidden ground of many things in science and in politics. And,
is intonation?
Even says intonation, yeah. How you tune.
Yeah. And Ein calls that frequencies. That's his more general word.
Yes, and he says if you want to survive in the new environment, you have to tune in. You have to change your intonation.
Yes, you tune into the tuning that's happened.
Yeah, so in a way, they were right in saying that the harmony is the thing that bonds everything at all levels, from the particles to the space.
The Aboriginal people, would never talk about it. They would not think it's important because they did it instinctively. They were constantly in tactile interplay. In Through the Vanishing Point, McLuhan has the Eskimo poem saying, "Weed in water am I." So the Eskimo is looking at the weed that's in the water, and he's saying, "I'm that," because he's swimming in it. He's interplaying with it. So that tactile interplay. Yeah.
Go on.
Go ahead.
But like you said, this is was all an effect of the alphabet. They want to get the laws that rule the universe. They want to understand why the mood of humans change with the music. Why the universe...
Because they had the means to express it. Because they developed writing, and you have to put your mind back to how writing was a ridiculous thing to most people back then. Why would anybody do that? But the elites learned the writing, and then that extended them into a whole new space, a new inspiration, and they wanted to conquer that new landscape. Now that means there's extensions, there's services to what writing did. But now we can look at the services and disservices, both. But most technologies were resisted by most people because they were of the older sensibility, and the elite moved it forward because they were somehow responding to the advantages of that technology. So we're not saying writing is bad. Ion says the printing press is the Dark Ages. That's a bit of a negative judgment. I'm pretty sure that Ian has to say that because he's talking on a mass level, not in academia. So he has to use value judgments. But he's going to correct that later.
Yeah, so maybe we just could hear a little music. We can hear a tragedy, and then Zappa doing the replay of that.
The Rite of Spring?
No, this is first. I sent you the Orestes tragedy. You don't have to play everything. Just.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'm going to mute everybody and get ready.
All
to play
participants are now muted. All participants are now unmuted.
It's tragedy. That's how they do the Sprechstimme, like in mass. They're sort of speaking and singing, and there were also choirs. But this is just an example of something.
What strikes me about it's so literal. It's like they're saying, okay, we got to be real sad, guys. So really emphasize sadness. It's like children doing sadness, drawing it out. It does not meet the rhythms of our time. It's a slower or a acoustic depth. There's no kinesis in it, no movement, no dancing. It's a fucking dirge. We would have no listeners if I played that shit, right?
Yes, and it was actually medicine.
Yes, that's what I could hear. They were pulling the tragic motion out of people. They were pulling it out.
There is an anecdote about Pythagoras. Somebody came to him because he was using music to heal people. And he said there was a young man who was very sad because the girlfriend abandoned him. So he wanted to burn the house of the bride. And he said, he just had to listen to other type of music.
And that changed him. So yes, they're very suggestible acoustic people. They go through all kinds of changes all day long because the environment affects them, and they know the environment affects them. Now, Roxy just said Pythagoras. No, we say Pythagoras. But in this video, they have a picture.
In Latin or in Greek, we say Pythagoras.
Right. And I noticed in the video, there's a man standing in front of a xylophone kind of thing, and it's spelled Pythagoras. It is Pythagoras. Roxy's getting the old pronunciation. It's not Pythagoras. It's Pythagoras. Pythagoras.
I was
That's
there.
What it is in the video. You were there. You and Mo.
No, that comes from the name of the Pittis. How do you call them in English? The
bread? Pita?
The priestesses of the Delphi Oracle were called the Pittis.
Yeah, Pythes or something. Yes. Well, when we looked up Ion was raised by two Pittis. Priestesses, high priestesses, with the weird name. I'd have to look it up. Look up Ion on Wikipedia.
I sent you the Chipney's studio footage. So it's like a parody. Zappa used to love this Sprechstimme.
Yes.
Like in a type of healing, because he said his music was healing. He really knew about Greek drama and how they used these myths to heal the people, and he was making like a parody of this.
Now, a book that McLuhan always stressed people to read is called The Therapy of the Word in Classical Antiquity. So the therapy of Sprechstimme, the therapy of the word. See, they knew acoustic space was the environment, and they knew how to modulate it. And then the I world comes in, and it's a different kind of sensibility. So different. So a lot of the New Age is literate people trying to retrieve old acoustic modes that we're talking about. You know what I mean? They're trying to get retuned to the acoustic environment. And they miss the tactile reality and then the extension of tactility. That's the real new part of McLuhan that most McLuhanites don't get. What is tactile and how the electric environment extends it. So the New Agers, literate baby boomers, go back trying to retrieve non-physical ear. That's why they retrieve the Buddhists and the ayahuasca and all this stuff. So ayahuasca is a bit deeper than acoustic space, but they're retrieving the word is healer. And, of course, they don't want semantic meanings because they get too much of that literacy, so they just want chanting, some kind of acoustic massage. And then the lazy ones just take Coke and listen to music, get massaged by music.
Yeah, so maybe we would like to hear the Chipneys by Zappa.
You want me to play? Did you send it to me?
Yes.
Okay.
You don't have to play all the whole examples, but just
right.
to illustrate the thing.
Right. Okay. So does anybody out there want to say something? Michael, Nicholas, Cha? No, I wasn't muted, Carolyn. Yeah, you just heard me all say that stuff, right? I just said...
Good.
No, they're not. They're all unmuted, Carolyn. Yeah, I unmuted them already.
Hi, Bob.
Yes,
this is
Sean,
all making me think of... I used to demonize things like music and the occult, so I would be... and obviously Zappa was the ultimate help with that.
Wait, let me tell you something about that, Sean, about just what you said. The literate, college-educated people, they had enough of literacy. They'd done well. They got their master's and PhD. They were vulnerable to another modality, acoustic space. So they would try to retrieve New Age sensibilities by meditation and that. I assume you never went to university. You're a high school kind of person. You're not super literate. So what does the semi-literate person do? They rigidify visual space. That's the populist fundamentalist Christian thing. They're not educated people who went through a lot of book reading and therefore want to massage it away by doing acoustic Buddhism and New Age therapies and channeling and all the variations. They are almost illiterate and they worship literacy. So they get rigid in visual categories, worship the Bible, and make crazy statements like you just did about, condemn music, condemn, the occult as demon. That's you going in, trying to get visual, because you being not a highly literate person, you're not tired of it. You want to take the time to refine it. So the working class goes for a fundamentalist religion, that they go towards visual space, and the super literate educated classes go to non-book stuff. And that's the battle between Trump and Hillary.
Yes, and I think this is the new type of...
Hey, just Roxy, I want to see what Jan thinks of that. What do you think of that, Sean?
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that I did that and why I did that, yeah.
Yes, I'm not putting you down as illiterate. It's just that you didn't have much book world. You didn't go to university, which is 4 years of intense reading. You never did that, right?
No, not in the I did that later in my life. I did after
when it
20s,
didn't matter.
I started to...
Yeah, you were forced to do it.
But I'd like to say something about that.
Go ahead, Roxy.
I was the contrary. I will not listen to what I thought was low culture, and you're also programmed in the universities like, that's entertainment music. That's not complex. That's very simple. That's stupid. That's not real art.
You had that bias for years.
Yes, and through ION, I have discovered all types of music, and I can enjoy and see that many things that are pop culture are going to be more relevant than things that are supposed to be high culture.
Right. High culture being literate culture, Gutenberg culture.
Yes, in the way Adorno talks about high and low culture.
Adorno, the famous Marxist critic.
This is another thing we are trying to do here with this bobbisy of all the environments. It's an odyssey to go back to our ascended state, like Ulysses and the Argonauts. We are exploring all the spaces, and we, in one video, Bob said, people don't know what we are for or against, because we're actually not like many other people making conspiracy like, oh, the Templars are bad, or the Freemasons, or monarchs, or this. It's like we just explore the things that are in all the spaces, and we don't judge.
Relax and allow about it. And you know what's interesting about high literate music that you studied, highbrow music? You're a literate person looking for an acoustic massage, but it has to be complex, almost mathematical. It has to have that literate effect in it. If you just take raw acoustic massage of folk culture and rock music and pop music, you've been made too literate and alienated from that to respond to it. See?
Yes, and that was the brilliant thing about Zappa. He could have become experimental contemporary composer, but he decided to go and make music for all audiences, with orchestra, with electronic music, with a rock band.
And nobody could do that. And it was always the question, let's say from 1968 till, by the time he died, they always said, how could this genius guitarist and genius composer like doo-wop? What is wrong with this guy? How could he act so stupid? It was the basic message of him saying, relax, allow, and enjoy all sound as an interesting phenomenon. Nobody could do that. They had a fundamentalism of their cultural consumption.
Yes, and that's very ironic, because sometimes you have a question and Ian answers you with a pop song, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
But
he put, we've all learned to love Ring of Fire, right? Because that's all about the Pacific Rim and the earthquakes and the end of the world, right? The Ring of Fire. I fell down in a burning ring of fire or something. That Johnny Cash song. You guys know it?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. It's on the playlist.
Roxy just learned it. A lot of what I play.
No. He actually did that. He answered one of my questions with that song, with that version.
But Roxy, for the most part, has never heard 80% of the music I play. Whereas for a lot of us, we know it from 40 years ago, before Roxy was born. Like, who was it? Bert. He hadn't thought of Charlie Mingus in 20 years. Right, Bert? Are you there? Did you get muted? Let me see here. Yeah, looks like Bert got muted. Right, Bert? Bert? Bert, I unmuted you. Okay, and Michael, did you want to say? Anybody can say something.
Yeah, the pattern that came up for me, Bob, was when talking about when Roxy's saying that Zappa didn't go into any specialized conducting field, that he could have gone into experimental or otherwise. Yeah. It seems he was always so much aware of his audience too, that he was also conducting his audience.
Yes. And conducting a response to the news. I mean, on his first album, he makes this now famous song about the Watts riots, because he was right there in L.A. when it was happening. Trouble coming every day. He wrote about events around him, and he called himself a journalist. Roxy, Michael was a pop music critic. You reviewed things, right, Michael?
Yep.
So
for a while,
so you wrote music. You wrote for music, and wrote about it. You see how subjective your writing art was compared to the McLuhan level of objective music criticism?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Bob. Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's right. Absolutely.
That's Latin.
Yes, that's Latin for Greek. Translated from Babylonian, which was stolen from the Phoenicians, who got it from the Egyptians, who stole it from fucking Bob. So you're just repeating my stuff back to me.
Yes. So maybe let's hear the music.
Cheapness.
Let's hear the cheapness.
What happened to Bert? Bert left us? What happened to Bert? Did Bert die? I mean, what?
Bert.
Maybe he just went to the toilet.
He went to the toilet.
You did not unmute Bert.
It's
there
a
you
bit
are,
of
Bert.
slippage, Bob.
Yes. Bert, you're back with us. What happened?
You couldn't hear can you hear me, Bob?
Now.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Yeah, my Skype went out, was acting weird. Hey, I wanted to say that, has anyone, if you listen to Ion's master list, that is really a massage of what Roxy was describing. I mean, it's like
yes,
a whole range of music. I mean, like, you know, after Vestal Goodman, you get Yo Gotti.
Yeah.
I mean, who would ever?
That's
who would imagine that? You know?
Yes, because it's the resonant interval. Everything at once. Everything
that's what happens predicting Ion.
With no reason at all.
Yes.
Yes. And, you know, Ion can claim that they made that fucking list 2,000 years ago. You know? He could say Zappa was imitating Ion.
That's probably why a lot of people don't like Zappa, because of his range. But I would hope that people in the last 4 years that you've been playing Zappa can really taste his genius in that music, because it's a wide variety, and Ion's tuning into it now. Really.
Yes.
I mean,
well, he always was. You heard me play that thing the other day where he said, look, we can't be a total protagonist for your reality, Bob. We must mime contrast. He's miming contrast, a model of little man's consciousness, who's always wrestling with contrast and opinions. Ginny said to me the other day, in our meeting on the phone on Tuesday, she said, I never realized Zappa had produced so much. She's starting to hear some of the Sunday morning stuff. It's like people have no clue how ignorant they are of what Zappa did. You know what I mean? I mean, she's heard a lot of Zappa. She's heard a lot of these shows. Why would she say that this late? But it's amazing how people block stuff. And she just never heard a big chunk of Zappa in 2 hours to notice, holy shit, he wrote all that. And that's just 1 week. You know, it's a way of pointing out how much of a pinhead one is with your stupid values. You know, I like this and don't like that. What the fuck is there a point in liking anything or not liking anything? Most of it's nice and it's soft. It's not. You're not in a fucking black hole of Calcutta. You're sitting in your comfortable living room with different sounds happening. But they did encourage it in youth, in like 10-year-olds. Hit Parader magazine. All the little girls had to say who their favorite Beatle was. So the very visual fragmentation of literate industrial culture goes into the kids, not as propaganda in the sense of some elite is making the kids stupid. The environment makes kids think that way when they're in a literate industrial society. They're always comparing.
Yeah, that could be the music box that the record companies tried to create when they boxed Zappa out, and they had all those, you know, retread music that they did all the years and stuff that a lot of people missed out. I mean, because there's something that Zappa said I remember listening to. They wanted to know something about why he played the guitar, and just listening to what you just shared, he said there's so many wide arrays of ways to express yourself with 6 strings and the frets, and you see that in his leads. Every lead you hear is different, but special.
Right. So a Marxist, a social critic, a Hillary Clinton would say we've got to improve our education and counter the effects of the evil Wall Street, which is conditioning kids to divide up music and have favorites. The Marxist or social critic doesn't realize that all people in industrial societies divide things up with visual categories. It's not caused by a conspiracy, by some elite making kids stupid. It's caused by the environmental effect. So it's natural for little kids in an industrial environment to have favorites, but not in... I don't think an Eskimo has any fucking favorites. They have to chant whatever the fucking tribe starts chanting. You can't run off and read a book up there in the Iceland. You have to get along with everybody constantly. You know, the group goes...
That book for war.
What'd you say? Not Sean, but the other guy?
I said better burn that book for warmth up there, Bob.
Right. Now, is Nicholas gone? Is Nicholas gone? Because Nicholas fucked up. He should be he doesn't know what we can do. All he experienced was me fucking hogging the conversation. Now we're listening to Roxy hog the conversation. So you can't say this show is Bob. We are doing something else, and Nicholas missed that. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
He only has one fragment of the Payday experience. Go ahead, Professor. Yes, sir. What?
Did Zappa, was there anything in Zappa's repertoire that mined anything similar to the fossil law that Ion brings up so much?
Never. He hated fundamentalist culture when he went to L.A. after he got arrested. What, Carol?
No, he did the tuba singers, which is kind of.
That's pre-literate. Fossil law is literate.
Well, that'd be interesting to ask Ion how the tuba singers fit in.
Yeah, he'd probably say, since Ion is a racist Christian, he'd say that the tuba singers are ripping off the fossil law that Moses and the boys did. Right? He being a Nazi retread who loves Trump of all fucking things. It's so embarrassing to have a fucking spiritual leader liking Trump. You don't realize it's very hard on me. You understand that. Anyway.
Bob, Nicholas is muted. I think he wants to respond to your accusations. He's muted.
Okay, good. Come on in, Nicholas. Get your gloves on. Come on, Nicholas. Defend your absence. Oh, is that what you're saying? I thought... Oh.
He's muted.
I thought he had muted himself. He was unmuting himself.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Jesus. Well, there's Bert. No. There's nobody muted. Where could that be? Madeline. I don't know if Madeline makes noise. As soon as I click off Madeline, the red thing comes up like there's something coming out of Madeline. But this is that you? Is that you, Nick? Way up there? Nicholas, I may have unmuted you. Where is he? Nothing's muted. So what's Nick doing?
Your red thing's broken, Bob, because I was on mute.
Who are you? Yeah, Madeline. I muted you, Madeline.
I know you did, but then you unmuted me, and I muted myself, and you said that you saw noise, so something's wrong, because you couldn't see noise if I was muted.
Yeah, and that was about 2.5 minutes ago.
Refresh your board. Refresh your board.
Okay, I'll refresh it. Yes, it could be a factor. No, everybody's unmuted. What does Nick think he's doing? Has he slipped away? Everybody's unmuted, Nick. There is an anonymous up at top with red coming through. That may be me. I can't tell, but maybe it is me. So Nick ain't here, Mike.
He's shouting on the chat line. Maybe he should, Nicholas, if you can hear this, just call in again. And that may be what you need to do. Because the Skype does switch off after every 4 hours. It shuts down and you have to come in again.
He's screaming in the phone. He doesn't know his disconnect, but he can hear us, so I don't know. On the chat, he's saying, will do. He says, I'm all good on this side, Bob. Yeah. And he says, crazy. Yeah, it is odd. Maybe we've had a great anomaly here. Maybe Nick slipped off. That may be great.
He's experiencing slippage.
Yeah. That is great. Come on
There are some parallel worlds, Bob, that you can hear Payday from, but you can't call in.
Right. That's right. And Nick may never get back. It doesn't look good. He's not getting back. I think we've got a casualty here. He joined Payday. Oh, here he comes. He came. Oh, he's lucky guy, Nick. Okay, Nick, you're here. You came in, Nick. All right. What was it like? Tell us about your parallel world experience. Uh-oh. He's not coming through. His phone arrived, but he didn't make it with the phone.
I'm here. Bob, I'm here.
I think that's Michael changing. It so sounds like Michael, right, Carol? You guys are very...
That's because you're a racist. You don't recognize accents.
I hate Africans.
Bloody racist.
Especially white Africans. Being black, I hate white people. Everybody knows that. But the intolerance that Roxy was talking about and someone else about Zappa's not intolerant, you see that on the McLuhan line. Because I dare to talk to a fucking schizoid that claims it's channeling, that's not allowed to be discussed. It's so silly, right?
Yes, it is. Yes,
and they think it's not academic. I became the most powerful person in the world just by tolerating every idiocy around and being able to talk to anybody. Because I listened to the fucking bus conductor. This was the way, the school of Bob. You just relax and listen and talk to everybody, and you become the most powerful person who ever lived. Okay, where are we at? We were going to discuss something? We're going to play cheapness?
Roxy was going to play something.
What are you saying, Roxy?
Just play the video to illustrate the Sprechstimme, the new episode.
Nick may not have come in. There's now two people. So is that you, Nicholas, the new guy that came in?
No, Paul.
There he is.
Hello?
So, Nicholas, what's your response?
I thoroughly enjoyed what Roxy was saying. Personally, I think in the beginning was something that was resonating with me quite a lot. And music really makes me happy. I mean, if I listen to music or chanting or whatever it is, and I think it's that vibrational thing that she was speaking about, and Pythagoras, and just mind-blowing stuff.
Reading books don't make you happy like that. Reading books don't make you happy like that.
It's like a more effective way to change your mood or your actions, according to the Greeks. Instead of giving you a big theory, they just listen to some type of music, some scale. They had analyzed all the different modes and their effects and the rhythm.
Remember, the literate person doesn't believe the environment affects them. He's got free will. He's got individual thought, individual agency. They don't even know that the environment wraps around them and does something. It wasn't until Pavlov's experiment that they said, holy shit, the environment fucking does something to us. That's how detached the book made people. And yet, before the book, everybody knew it was all interactive, constantly, under acoustic conditions.
Yes, and the classification that Pythagoras starts of trying to translate the laws of the universe in something, the eternal laws, they want to write them down and have them.
Can I just say something else, Bob?
An effect of the alphabet. This trying to understand the laws of the universe.
Now, when you say the alphabet, you have to understand that because Alexander the Great streamlined the multi-leveled, ideogrammic, syllabary, all these really complicated local tribal forms of noting things or early writing, because the alphabet could take whatever the local crazy alphabetic kind of thing was, they could streamline it and contain it in 26 letters or whatever it was, 24 letters. And that he began an assembly line. He could go to any culture and take their stuff, which couldn't be understood by the culture down the street, and make it standardized. So that was the first standardization, the phonetic alphabet. That's what you have to understand. He began uniform, everybody getting on the same page space. And he could build an empire. He could standardize his orders to every culture. in the hierarchy of the empire. But it was not enough paper and visual writing materials for him to maintain it, so it collapses. 100 years or so, 200 years later, the Romans could do it because they built the roads and they had the papyrus from Egypt, and so they ruled for 400 years with this paper uniformity, and when the Egyptians finally pulled out the papyrus from them, they didn't have the writing supplies, Rome collapsed.
But Bob, aren't you talking a bit about a separation?
What kind of separation?
Those that could read and write and those that couldn't. They could sing.
Yes, that's why you had to be a landed, propertied, written, literate guy to be in the Greek democracy.
Yeah, yeah.
It was an effect of the alphabet and writing.
But wasn't that intentional?
I watched this movie. I watched this movie, 12 Years a Slave. 12 Years a Slave. I don't know if anyone's watched it. And I watched it this week. But the main thing I got out of it was, because it's based on a true story, but this guy's whole way of getting out of his situation was getting hold of a pen and paper and posting a letter. And because he was black, he wasn't allowed to post. So he had to get someone to post for him. But the first dilemma was he had to get paper. And the whole thing's based on his slavery over the 12 years, and if only he could have a piece of paper. And then finally he gets a piece of paper, and he gets someone to post a letter for him, and that's how he gets his freedom. But
what year is this? It's like the mid-20th century?
Oh, my God.
It was pre-Civil War. Pre-Civil War.
Oh, way back there. Right.
Yeah, he was free. He was a free man, but then he got kidnapped into slavery, and they just gave him a new identity. So he just needed to send a letter to the people that knew him.
Yeah, but the other part was he couldn't let anybody know that he could read and write, because that was the
right.
Yes, that was a disservice. He had to pretend he couldn't.
Right. So listen to this. McLuhan explained racism in the southern United States. He said, race is not the issue. When you go to New Guinea and there's 50 tribes in an area, and they don't fucking leave their tribal area to go to the next tribe because they'll get raped, molested, masturbated all over, and golden showered, right? Just to get fat bigger. People getting pissed off. When you're pissed off, you actually have an action that goes with it. But so the tribalism and the hatred among the tribes was really serious. And they would ritualize, every now and then they'd have a programmed little battle to release tensions. Well, you got to look at the South. You've got the black tribe and the white tribe, and the whites weren't against the black skin. They were against the fucking tribe. It was like Africa in the South. It's not as industrialized. Two tribes holding on to the things. And so I just watched this documentary on Afghanistan, and the whole Bush-Obama wars in Afghanistan never worked because the tribalism never got overtaken. The tribes hate each other, and they're all dope-dealing gangs. And they couldn't bring in any kind of normal, equal, fair democracy. It was impossible. And they gave up a few years ago. Britain and America left the place. And the Evereys told me that Nelson Mandela couldn't get a national consciousness going because of the fucking tribalism. You know, they say white man is violent. No, the environment that whites created. Even though there's a lot of blacks who made technologies, you know, so you can't even say it's white or black. Western technology creates a lot of violence, not the people. So there is no racism and this sexism and those kind of even class definitions. They don't apply to the real dynamic of where violence comes from. The tribal people before white man are more violent than white man. Or white man was just as violent in Europe. Or then you have Florence in the Renaissance, and these people have this faux civilized behavior. You see this in the Medici movies where Cosimo Medici is trying to bring in books and arts and civilization to the pagan tribalism, and it's just the beginning. And he leads something that does succeed because the printing press comes along. So it's a better way to look at why people are all fucked up than getting personal and saying, you know, you don't like country music, you're an asshole, you're not allowed to vote, you know, something like that. It's irrelevant. The environment causes change.
I wanted you to play the
We're going to do Cheapness. I'll play it. Yeah, I'll play Cheapness.
No, well, that's a long time ago.
I got already go. I'm going to play it. All right? We're going to play Cheapness.
Yes, but I wanted to say something.
Yeah, go ahead.
Goes with what you were saying. Because when Stravinsky made that work, people riot. They started fighting and destroying things. Like they were really turned on in a way that was really aggressive, really extreme.
That's when art mattered. That's when music mattered. They had such a little media diet that everybody says, oh, God, it's like going to church. We're going to go to the theater and see a fucking musical piece. And if you don't like it, those are fighting words. You've ruined their Sunday, right? You've ruined their Sunday. If people get that, I don't hear enough laughter.
After, I don't know. You can just play just a little part.
No, I'll play a lot. If I fucking like it, we're going to listen to all of it, okay?
We can talk, but it's just like an illustration of what we're talking about.
I know, Roxy. It's just an illustration. That's right. It's just a puny illustration. But I'm slow. It takes me a while to get the point. It's going to take me a while to understand what this music is about, what the point you're trying to make, okay? Okay, here we go.
All participants are now muted. All participants are now unmuted.
The Modern Man Odyssey, Encountering the Sirens, Medusa, the Cyclops.
Yes, I've never seen that footage before. I love seeing my people. There were two black lesbian girls singing there, like me, my type. And it's fun watching them react to the white racist Frank Zappa. And how
you got the rhapsode and the choir.
Yeah, the rhapsode. That is great footage. And all the time, this oral cacophony is going on. Zappa's there like a Pythagorean robot, very erect, conducting. Like he's so fucking inhuman in terms of what's going on. He's very detached in the tactile position of monitoring everything that's going on. He's listening to the whole mixture. He does look odd, right, Roxy? He looks attentive, super attentive.
Well, because it's also complex and everything has to be in sync, and he's also playing and doing things, so he cannot cue the choir, and so you have to look at him. He's really into his Odyssey. The Odyssey of a man sitting fucked up watching the movie from home. And then,
now, what did you want to show? What did you just say all that you wanted to point out about that, or was there something about Sprechstimme or something you wanted to say?
Well, it's like a modern way of doing the rhapsode and the choir.
Yeah.
You know.
Yes.
People.
Yeah, like that. It has to be hyper.
So
what the fuck? Who's got the crackly phone? Jesus Christ! There's always some stupid noise coming through. Let me try to block that. I don't know who's doing that. Look, if you're not speaking, put your phone on mute so we don't get your environmental golden showers coming through here. Okay, look like they muted it. Because it's very crackly. Now look at this. Barry Miles wrote a book on Zappa. He sees Zappa's music totally a product of the L.A., Los Angeles auto culture. Now the hyperness of the music, the Greeks would shoot Zappa, right? They have to have it slow. They have less kinetic interference in their life.
That was a tragedy, what we heard.
Yeah,
but,
a tragedy.
You had the rhapsode and the choir.
It was the worst composition I've heard. The fucking composition was a tragedy. They really knew how to make the music tragic. Let's make some really bad music.
Correct.
What, Roxy?
Orestes by Euripides.
And look at the hyperkinetic Zappa stuff going on. Now, most people can't take Zappa. This is 1973, 40 years ago. They wouldn't let that on the radio. It was so hyper, but he was actually describing the rhythms that people lived in the present that they didn't want to be aware of.
Yes, and he said his music had a cathartic effect. He wanted to heal society, like the Greeks.
Yeah. And you can see this in the story, Roxy, the Uncle Meat story. Read it. Hey, Uncle Meat is planning to take over society with the Reuben and Jets doo-wop music, which is a good metaphor. It just occurred to me. Zappa knew that if he brought doo-wop into his musical apparent rock specialty, he would befuddle everybody. And they'd be impressed or they'd be awestruck. How can this guy put stupid doo-wop? So that it was almost him describing the psychological technique of knowing that people won't understand how a composer could do doo-wop. That was his magic to get charisma, to dumbfound everybody.
Yes.
That was his method. That was his musical magic, conceptual magic. And you know, he has Uncle Meat, this old scientist that's kicked off, been fired from the government, is pissed off, and he's going to get back at the government. And in his library is the Arms of Krupp and a bunch of books that Barry Miles said in an article Zappa was reading at the time. So the very books in Frank's fucking studio, he puts into this garage, run-down place where old Uncle Meat is doing. It's Zappa's basement apartment in the picture. So he's Uncle Meat.
Yes, and Pythagoras had in his school the first 3 years. You had to be audience. You could not see him, and these students that could not see Pythagoras the first 3 years were called the acousmatics.
Wow.
And they were the exoteric, the ones that were not initiated. And
they were not esoteric. They were EXO. They were outsiders, outliers, right? Exoteric. That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Right?
So in a way, the audience is exoteric.
Right.
They can listen to the knowledge.
Can't look. The eye is sacred.
But they don't know the hidden ground.
Right. Is the eye. Is the guy that they could see. That would never be emphasized in an acoustic culture, but the eye is being separated out as a special space.
Yes, and so the exoteric were called the profanos, the ones that were outside the temple.
Right. Not inside. You see, this is what I like about McLuhan. It's a useful, universal language to bypass class arguments, race arguments, gender arguments, poverty arguments, spiritual arguments. It's the most general language around, the environments that people use. And they are the unconscious. Not some inky dark thing inside your brain, some Freudian sexual instinct or something. It's the environment around you that you don't notice is the collective unconscious or social mortar. That's a way to talk to the whole planet when after World War II you had access to the whole planet. You get on TV, goes all over the world in America. So you had to come up with a new way to talk to millions of types of people. And he did it.
Yes, and
another level is...
oh, wait.
Let's see what Nick, are you aren't you impressed with that, Nick? What I just said?
I'm hugely impressed, Bob. I mean, that was just pearls of wisdom.
Thank you, Nick. You deserve to stay here. You're doing well.
The question I wanted to ask is that your utterances about those that could see and those that couldn't see, who is benefiting more, those outside or those inside?
Well, the inside guys, Pythagoras was able to hypnotize people to make them think he had something worth teaching. That's see you walk down the street corner and fucking claim you got a school and make all these people come to it.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm walking down the street and I hear music in a lobby or in a basement, and you can't get in. There's like an urge to move in towards and see who's playing and what's playing, and that's what I'm saying. Were those people moved outside more than the people inside? Because there was a separation again, and I think that's the critical thing for me, is that all throughout the ages, it's who's better than thou.
Right, well, that's why I never wanted to learn an instrument. It was more fun to hear the music because, George Duke's playing the piano and the other guys, they don't hear it all. They sort of distort it when you're a musician. You're not getting the full pleasure. You're inside it, I don't know what you hear as a musician, but you don't get the great total thing of being the consumer of it, the audience. Better to be dancing.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, Roxy, you wouldn't hear the whole symphonic effect, would you, when you're in an orchestra?
Yes, because you can you can disconnect. It's like maybe when you're learning a piece, you analyze everything.
Yeah.
Because
so
when you understand the construction, you understand how it's built, then it's easier to remember. Like, oh, this repeats then here.
Are you saying you can hear the whole thing, Roxy, when you're in the orchestra?
Yes.
And that's so musicians. I had a bias that they couldn't.
No, it's actually.
Yeah, but
you can disconnect from analyzing, and it's a high when you sing in a big choir or you play with other people, and you are inside all these frequencies, and you have this synchronization. Sometimes.
So it's a different kind of experience. Different kind of experience than being
it's a high. It's really
okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, I think it would be better to be in, Bob, and not out.
Well, I wouldn't become fucking myself what I am today if I got involved in anything.
Just learn the piano, Bob.
Yeah, I learned the piano. I'll work on that.
But well, after 3 years of being acousmatics, just listening without seeing, they could then start learning the secret laws of mathematics, the laws of the universe, the laws of music.
Visual space. They could learn visual space.
Yeah, and they will get then the explanation, for example, why these notes are in the scale. It's not arbitrary.
Right.
He will then explain the whole golden mean proportions and how everything in the universe is connected, and why the golden mean shows in everything in nature, in human proportions, in everything.
Now, you know, and he's explaining to a people that are just beginning to have questions like why. The tribal people don't have questions about why something causes something else. So he had to start explaining and making up shit about why things connected to something else. That's all part of visual culture.
Yes, and people were so turned on by that he was really treated as a god. It was a cult.
Yeah, it was a new...
It was...
and that reminds me, I wanted to say that McLuhan said, he says, taking drugs, he said in the 60s, is silly when music is drug enough for anybody. So, you know, he understood how powerful pop music was. He wasn't like his generation, you know, stuck back with classical music. He and Carpenter even wrote that pop music obsoletes the classical orchestras. Now, this is a guy fucking a professor at the university, and the university professors didn't believe that. They thought they had values, that pop culture was anathema, was a curse and all that. But McLuhan was open enough to notice that the pop music was better than anything Beethoven did. And then, so we lived entirely by music, and it was drug enough. We didn't need pharmaceutical drugs or recreational drugs. And that's what the drops do. They got Roxy liking every kind of music, so music became drug enough for Roxy.
Yes, I don't sleep listening to all types of music and think, oh, this is cool. Oh, that sequence. Oh, that filter. Ooh. Things that
you don't do that. You're saying you don't do that?
Yes, now I do.
Oh, you
now
do?
I can see the value of all types of human creation.
Right.
Yes, and
so
then...
what made you do that? When did you start realizing you liked a larger range of music? A couple of years ago?
No, I think I only started with this playlist, and like for a week I've been listening to music in the night, and I sleep very little, and I just enjoy so much to
Are you saying you just realized you like pop music just now, this week?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean,
I thought
I used to like Zappa or Daft Punk or Kraftwerk.
Yeah, different.
Like, I really like those. But now I can listen to other types of songs, and And I say, wow.
Because he made a playlist. The playlist altered you. Well, that's pretty amazing.
Yes, I don't know why I react so strongly to Ion.
Right.
Because I was like, we should do something about music appreciation and talk about this and talk about that.
Okay, so anybody else? Kim, Susanna, wanted to say something?
Bob, I wanted to add on to what you said about McLuhan's perspective, not being a racial perspective or a color perspective or a status perspective. And even though his perspective may have evoked emotions in people, when they confronted his perspective, having his perspective or using his perspective is a way of looking at things beyond the emotional charge of things. And it's probably one of the first ways of being able to do that.
Yep, it's a way of awareness that all the gurus are trying to teach in old-fashioned ways. He was dealing with the awareness techniques necessary for living in a global theater.
Yeah, so I'll just do this very fast. After being the acousmatic, they became mathematics for like 3 or 5 years.
Right.
And after the math, after like 5 years of mathematics, they could get into the mystery landscape, learning about dreaming and portaling.
Right.
And that was called the Sebastics stage.
The what?
And Sebastics. Sebastics.
Wow.
Yeah, so they had been there like some 8, some 10 years before getting into the mystery landscape.
So it was so devastating, they had to do it really slowly. And Ion is saying all portals are open now. You can expect to have a weird experience any time the coming week. And it can't be controlled. You can still see the bureaucratic anthropomorphic control of society there.
Yes, and then after, again, 3 to 5 years of that, they will go into politics and economy. But they were not allowed to participate in the public life. They could only be behind the throne, behind that authority.
Right.
Like a guide or...
It's always the visually biased ivory tower perspective, the ivory tower, separate from society. And you could not be separate from society in the tribal world unless you were some kind of secret elite. But you can be separate and have an elite happening with visual space, leading to the ivory tower, the artist in the garret.
And I see a lot of similarities with the Pythagoras school, with the mystery school, and then the Masons, how they have these different grades and different knowing that they have to go through, and how they have to be behind the authority. They shouldn't.
Yeah, the Masons were like retrieving medieval and earlier society. They had an elite sensibility, and laid out, did the things you just described, the 4 phases.
Yes, and the mystery schools, I think, just survived because there were always people keeping this type of hermetic knowledge, and then they develop into different groups like the Templars or the Masons, or some of the Vatican also shows a lot of this Pythagorean mystery school knowledge. Like they use a lot the Tetractis in the coats of arms of the Vatican. And then you have this painting, the School of Athens, that is besides the Sixtine Chapel, with Leonardo and Frank and Pythagoras and all the philosophers. So,
now LaRouche says that Pythagoras, LaRouche sees the beginning at the Temple of Ammon in Egypt, or around Egypt, Ammon. He has that as the beginning school, and Pythagoras and all these people went to the Temple of Ammon. So that's the Egyptian, that's Ophanel. That's the stuff that Ion's saying is happening in Egypt.
Yes. Yes, that's it.
And the Freemasons are taking advantage of the isolating effect of print to form their own secret society to keep the oral tradition going. Semi-oral with the Pythagorean visual space in it, but they also had the mystery. The mystery school, which is the fourth level in Pythagoras, is the first or second level in Aboriginal societies. They're not going through the math, the music, and all of those arts. They just get you right into the mystery school right away. And they usually do it by sending, well, some tribes would just send you out in the wilderness. You had to learn to adapt to that, right? Go through some psychosis.
Yeah.
Yes. So now I would like to ask you to play the new paradigm for Meinken. This LaRouche. Yes, I sent it to you. This is LaRouche analyzing Kepler. Kepler studied Pythagoras to understand the harmonia mundi, the structure of the universe.
What did you say about Kepler?
Yeah, Kepler thought that to know where each planet is located, he could use the scale made by Pythagoras, because he said there's this music of the spheres.
Right.
And all the planets are creating music, the divine music.
Okay, so an idea get from this, Roxy, if you remove science, Kepler, astronomy, and you remove music and Pythagoras, it's always the same school teaching the mystery landscape. It's just that they had to go through the accumulated social mortar of the media of the day, like the alphabet making this go through math and stuff and music, but they still, the original one was the mystery landscape. So that's why Ion says there's pretty well no time in culture if you ignore the time that mortar creates, the different kinds of social programming. It's always the same knowledge that Ion is trying to present in all societies. It's always
yes, and at the time of Kepler, we already have the printing press. So this fragmentation and this trying to get the laws of the universe and understand the harmonia mundi, the harmony that bonds everything in the universe.
So you know what the reaction
what they were
to
trying
that
to
is?
do with
The reaction is the witches. They say, fuck that male fucking bullshit about math, science, and music. Fuck that shit. Come on over here. We'll astral project and fly past the moon. You know what I mean? So the primitive stuff was kept by the women. They weren't allowed to engage in the arts and fragmented. So the men were just getting themselves, like you got these kids going to college today, over the last 50 years, they got to do their PhD, blah, 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 all this stuff they learn, and then at 40, they hear Ion. And then they have to argue with it and connect or not. But look at the layers of social mortar schooling in external media that people have to go through. 10 years in Pythagoras school is nothing compared to what people have to do today. And look at the course load they got to take.
And look what you were saying before. Kepler retrieves Pythagoras, and then LaRouche retrieves Kepler. Yes.
Well, LaRouche is a great alternative way of an encyclopedic review of history. Like, all the people mentioned in McLuhan's PhD are talked about by LaRouche, Bert. Same people.
Wow.
It's all part of the Western canon. But LaRouche says the good guys are Platonists, whereas McLuhan says the good guys are Aristotelian. The Aristotelians are in the... The Aristotelians in the school of Athens, you see Aristotle is offering his palm. Sensory involvement. It's a sensory mix around you. That's Aristotelian. So McLuhan always emphasized the dynamic symmetry of tensions among proportions among senses. Whereas the Platonist says, fuck that, go for the Godhead. Ion tends to be more of a Platonist, but when you really listen closely to Ion, he's also Aristotelian. He's got it all in there. But on surface hearing, he's saying ascend. He is the picture of Plato in the School of Athens painting who's pointing up. And that's biased.
Yeah, Leonardo.
That's up there. You call it Leonardo versus Frank, right? King Frank.
Yeah.
But it's generally considered Plato and Aristocrates. Is Socrates in there? Yeah, it's Plato versus Aristotle, I think. And the point is what?
Plato is Leonardo, Aristotle is Frank the First, and then all Pythagoras, Michelangelo is somebody else.
They're in there, right?
Everybody.
The thing is that So this is what's interesting. You can it was great reading McLuhan as reading LaRouche as an antidote to McLuhan. You know, that made my mind more agile, because he's covering the same people. And sort of had a different agenda. Basically, LaRouche is an engineer. He's saying the goal is to allow more and more people contribute to making new buildings, new bridges, new machines, new technologies. They're not studying the effects. Whereas McLuhan goes to the aesthete side, the lazy guy who ain't going to fucking be an engineer and build shit. He's just going to study the effects of the stupid engineers and make satires out of it, of what their big plans don't get anywhere, you know? So
yes, and for me, this School of Athens mural is so important because it's like the proof of what Ion is saying and Ophenel. It's besides
what did you say? I missed the first part of your sentence. What paragraph? What did you say? Something is the proof?
The mural of the School of Athens besides the Sixtine Chapel in the library.
Yeah.
In the center, you have Leonardo and Frank the First, Leonardo pointing up, Frank the First signaling the earth, so as above, so below. So they, in the Vatican, they have all these Mr. School knowing, the Hermetic knowing, and in the front you see Pythagoras reading, and he also has a
compass
board with
Archimedes?
No, like a board with the Tetractys.
Right, Tetractys. But what do you see your point here? What are you saying?
That Ion is saying Ophenel was working with all these people through the ages.
Right.
And they have, in the Vatican, and we have been studying how Leonardo and Frank were doing all these castles, and then it ends up with the putting the particle accelerator in the Louvre to analyze human creations of the extended man.
Oh, and did you hear Ion say that when we were at the Louvre was when they were putting the particle accelerator in?
The new one.
Yes.
Yeah. Let me go back to this thing. Ion says historically the Vatican knew the mystery landscape, but not so much today, which shows you that even the secret societies their knowledge got diminished and lost in social mortar media. There was so much external outer kingdom media going on that the guys mainly lost. The guys who were supposed to know it lost memory of it, of the mystery landscape. So we're at the lowest point on that level, and that's why Ion has to come forth to reinvigorate it.
Yes, and in this video by LaRouche, they're talking about the expanded man, the man that is going to the space and controls the solar system. You can start around the second minute.
Okay.
And it's just the beginning. Just the beginning. We cannot. Her explanation of the scales of, you have to see it. And it's not. The important thing is what she says at the beginning.
Okay.
About the expanded man.
Do you know the date of this video?
No, but maybe in YouTube you can see it. I think
it says music
2014, I think.
Yeah, published 2014. It's called Musical Tuning, Kepler and the Solar System. Then the question, what is the organization of the universe? Now that's totally visually biased meme. So he's replaying visual space meme. The Android meme replays these schools that are just now ideas or imagery. Nobody lives in the universal visual space that LaRouche is retrieving. So, one meme is retrieved by LaRouche, another meme is retrieved by McLuhan. I say in my essay, LaRouche retrieves the meme, the great idea of technological liberalism, that's engineering. McLuhan retrieves the the meme of Thomism, the main dogma of the Catholic Church. Thompson retrieves the meme of Buddhism and Asian non-Christian ideologies. And Croker retrieves the meme of Marxism, or updated Marxism, or literate Marxism. Variations on there. Then what does Dobbs do? Dobbs retrieves the meme of Tetrad Manager, who juggles the 4 previous memes, like Uncle Meat did. All right, so here's LaRouche emphasizing the ear, the visualized ear, musical tuning, but they relate it to other...
Sorry, start at the minute number 2, the second, because they talk at the...
Right. At 1:59, I've got it. So, now the woman at the head of the table, around this time, maybe 2 years before, big scandal in the LaRouche cult because LaRouche was trying to have an affair with her. That's what several people left. Yeah, left the group because they got pissed off at LaRouche, this old guy.
That's the Monica Lewinsky of LaRouche?
That's right. And so she got raised up, and she got to be able to sit at the table and be in the show, and be on the table in the video they made. I forget her name.
Just go to the 7:33, and then we stop.
What about, from 2, you say 5 minutes, 2 to 7:33. Yeah. And you watch how this girl tries to explain, it's all LaRouche brainwashing, but you hear her pretty good at saying it. You won't get many, you won't see Trina's daughter doing this stuff or Sean's daughter doing this stuff. Let's see. I will mute everybody. Oh, look. Here's Alyssa and Nate just in from the cold.
Hello.
Hello. You're hearing a bit of what we're doing, eh?
Yes, I thought it's been very stimulating so far. I've been listening for like 10 minutes. And when you were talking about Ion, I'm excited for the clip, Roxy. I just wanted to mention one thing. When you were talking about Ion, keep saying the same thing in every culture when you take away time.
Yeah.
That made me think of the wave. That made me think of the wave meets the wall.
Yes. The wall is social mortar.
Yeah.
And remember, what's interesting is that McLuhan says that James Joyce had stone and water in every line he wrote, the dialectic. That's stone the waves and the wall. Isn't that neat?
Cool. That is cool.
In one of his first books, he mentions the Roman guy, I don't know when, time of Jesus or after. Belbus is building a wall. It's like a motif in Portrait of the Artist Young Man. Belbus is building a wall. And then the magazine wall is a big metaphor in Finnegan's Wake. So the wall thing is interesting as mortar, and the river is the water is complementary to that. Ion favors the water.
Right, the music, which is what we're about to hear, right, Roxy?
No, you're going to hear a panel.
Okay. Oh, I've seen this. I think I've seen this one.
That's the expanded man, the solar system. Right. How man is going to control the sun.
Yeah, I look at LaRouche and McLuhan, Thompson, Croker. They're soaked in their memes, and then I'm Ophenel flitting around like a butterfly, hopping from one to another. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Expert
That's
in them.
Beautiful. Yeah.
But of no use to any one of them. I'm of no use to any one of them because I can't be totally loyal.
You're like passing through them like neutrinos, kind of consolidating them and expanding them at all. Yeah.
Good one.
I'm the past disguised as the future, pretending he's present, passing through like a neutrino.
Yeah.
Ripping off the towel from the hotel, the quote 200 Motels cartoon section.
Yeah, is this maybe hour?
It's interesting to say that Kepler was turned on into the intonation when the printing press became an environment.
Yes.
Then the Nazis changed the intonation with the radio.
Yes.
And then
cool, yeah.
retrieves Kepler again, and Kepler was retrieving Pythagoras. So it's
LaRouche's TV. He's comprehensive. He goes through all the cultures, the different nations and their heroes, their Platonists. He gathers together. That's why when they went out and had their newspaper, they had a newspaper in all the major countries in the world, taking LaRouche's system and applying it to the heroes of that nation, to the Platonists, and they knew them all, of the literate Gutenberg era. They really had managed themselves.
We already mentioned, I think, was the second or the first Zappa thing, how Bach was into the music of the spheres, and his intonation, the well-tempered clavier, was trying to translate the perfection of the universe and how the harmony of the planets, the divine music, and that was the evolution of Western music, was actually creating the laws that Zappa rejected of harmony,
right?
That were supposed to be the laws that create the harmonia mundi, the harmony in the universe.
He rejected all the visual space and even the acoustic space to create a tactile immersion in anything that made a sound.
And that's for LaRouche. That's like, now all these great ideas of Kepler, of Beethoven, of Bach are being rejected.
LaRouche and paints. Yeah, it's interesting. There's an article in the New Solidarity. I think there was their newspaper in '71, and so their musical scholar writes about Zappa and says Zappa is a replay of some guy in Weimar Republic in the 20s in Germany who went around with a commune or group and probably caused sex, drugs, orgies in German culture. So he was like an early hippie commune, or like Wavy Gravy in the Hog Farm, or Ken Kesey and the Pranksters. They think Zappa is that in 1971. They don't know Zappa's a composer
maybe
and all the other stuff.
The Dadaists?
The Dadaists, yeah.
Yeah, they were doing.
They look at Zappa as a retrieval of the corrupt Dada. Yeah, it's interesting how LaRouche rejects all of 20th century art and goes back to the geometry and trigonometry of Brunelleschi, who's a key figure in the Medici's TV show, Building the Dome in Florence, how he solves that. He's a hero for LaRouche. But LaRouche goes through the real scientific meaning of Beethoven and the physicists and all that. So he does great mixture of eye and ear, but it's still under visual rules. But he is so cool, he says the rules cannot be held on to. We get temporary rules, and then a new situation makes new rules we got to find. But he's still making rules.
He's like Pythagoras. He believes in the golden mean, in the perfect proportions, and the golden mean, this vortex.
Well, when you start hanging out with the ayahuasca cults, or a bunch of fucking hippies in a commune, spend a year or two with them, you'll yearn for fucking symmetry and abstract geometry, because it just gets to be too much specialized in the tactile oddal of the commune.
Yes, and the scale came from translating the golden mean, the proportions, into the divisions of a chord, and Pythagoras saw, the fourth, the fifth, and the octave that he introduced are consonant, are harmonious.
Yeah.
And that comes from the golden mean. And LaRouche thinks we have to go to the natural order of things to be in harmony with the universe.
He agrees with Ion. He's not that rigid. He's almost faking visual order. But you can look at that buzzing confusion of pre-literate societies, the acoustic chaos, even though it wasn't chaotic to the people. But when writing came in, you had a way to standardize, to smooth over the rough edges of social chaos. And that was appealing. That was a new instrument to sort of smooth out the extreme bias of an acoustic society. They tried to balance it with some visual space. So you have all these movements all the way through history trying to balance things politically, economically, culturally, educationally, mystically. They all were aware, well, there's a little off balance here. We've got to bring in these other modalities. And none of them ever worked. And now we're in a global balanced society, but no one can understand it. So then we had to bring in ion to create the original balance, or to retrieve the original balance from the mystery landscape.
Yeah, that makes me think of, really quick about when you're talking in the Rock series with Scott Woods, you say something like it needs to be switched from one modality to the other so that you can get a ratio to know. So iondome, even though it's not a rule, it's an environment, it creates a way to shift things in a modality, right?
Yeah, to shift you out of the android meme. I mean, that you have to be fucking super powerful to get over the android meme. Most of society is collapsing because they can't beat the android meme.
Yeah. Yes, and it's also interesting that McLuhan said each new environment demands a modulation of perception, a balancing of perception.
Yeah.
That's what Ion is saying. If you don't get into tuning into the new frequency, you're not going to stand the new environment.
Yeah, what was interesting for me was I knew the new yoga. McLuhan and LaRouche mixed them all together. You got new techniques of awareness for people embedded in social mortar or the wall. But all I could do was tell you how to sort of remove yourself from the hypnosis of each cultural dynamic or each charismatic zone, each quadrant. But I didn't have a solution other than Mir and the D-cell and Coldplay. So I set up the answer, but it didn't really have an antidote to the whole fucking thing. And I probably thought what I offered was enough of an antidote because I had a sunny disposition and I could relax and allow and put up with the shit. Most people are intense. If you give them a way out, that fucking way out has to achieve something for them. They're not fucking relaxing, allowing. You said, okay, Bob, I will go your way. This better fucking get me something. You know what I mean? I was like I said, I didn't give a fuck. I said, hey, if you want to pretend we're aware, we can fucking do this, okay? We don't have to be aware, but, if we're around people who talk about it, let's teach them this stuff because that's more accurate. But I had a sunny disposition or acceptance of being unenlightened.
Yes, and the LaRouche series are called the new paradigm for mankind. So this is really the new paradigm for non-humans.
I once visited the LaRouche place, and I started the fucking LaRouche thing. I'm the one, if you read my diary, who got LaRouche going in the students of New York. And so I visited them through the years, and one time I was there in 1980 on 58th Street in New York City, and I was talking and learning from this female geometer. She was telling me all the stuff, and I was listening. And then she said, what are you holding in your other arm? And I was holding like 3 or 4 Zappa bootlegs I just bought at some store downtown. And she said, what's that? And I show her the Zappa bootlegs. She goes, holy shit, we're going to have to do something about that. She immediately pronounced me as fucked up because I was holding the Zappa. And she thought I was a member of the cult, that I'd be around to be programmed. And I said, yeah, you're right, this Zappa, that's probably shit. Yeah, I got to get back to Beethoven. And then I left and went over to the Zappa place or the Thompson place. I went to another cult. I would circulate through the cults every day and visit them. And every one of them thought I was a good member of their cult.
Wow.
Butterfly.
Yeah, butterfly.
This is the thing I like about you, that we can look into everything without becoming fanatics of just one thing. Okay, let's play
on that note,
video.
Bob.
Yeah. Yes, Michael.
Bob, the Android meme, you're saying the difficulty of overcoming the Android meme. I made a prediction a week or two ago that there would actually be a disease. The people that were having a problem with Trump would actually die of a particular disease, and he called it Trumpitis. Now, what's interesting is in
Hey,
week,
Mike,
Bob,
we already got the solution for it. We already made the solution for it.
Yeah.
We know it's coming.
But Bob, they've actually named it now. This week
it happened
in the
a week
news,
later.
Yeah, they've already named it in the news. One of the news broadcasters on Fox said they've called it PTDs, post-Trump disorder. So there he goes again, Ian.
Yes, and you see, we know it's probably accurate to see Trump as a biblical archetype because of the fucking nuttiness that's going on about him. You know what I mean? The crazy reaction. People know, they're non-physical knows, holy shit, this is the paradigm shift that LaRouche predicted, that Bob predicted on CKLN. This is it. Holy fuck, I'm not ready.
Yeah. He's the modality. He's a way to see it have broken.
Right. What'd you say? See it half broken?
I'm seeing Trump as a modality in a way that we can kind of see the android meme has broken, and Trump is a modality. It shows that.
Well, it's very precise what Ian says. The android meme destroys the media. Media would be analog media. The android meme is digital. But he's the Rumpelstiltskin in the middle of the android meme, which is my chart. He can't be named. They can't categorize him.
Then he didn't want you to talk about Trump as the Rumpelstiltskin.
Yeah, you heard that? Ian said that, right?
Yeah.
Bob, let's not let Donnie's listening. Let's not tell him everything, Bob. Okay,
play the video.
Yeah.
All participants are now muted.
Wouldn't have fallen for it. Good. I want to pick up on the discussion from last week's show, where you went through an extensive discussion on the implications of the work of Vladimir Vernadsky. And the thing that really struck me about the discussion is your insistence that the work what Vernadsky demonstrated is that not only is man other than any other living process on the planet that we know in quality, in power, and in rates of progress, but that so not only is he other than all of the development of life up until mankind, but he's also the driving force for the development of life on the planet. And then you went farther with that and said, no, man is the driving force, not just of life on the planet. Man is the driving force for all development and progress of the solar system as a whole. I just wanted to read what I found to be a very provocative quote from that discussion. You said, the process of man's evolutionary development in the solar system is the proper measure of what the time is for the human species, for life, and for the solar system. A little bit later, the fact that we as human beings are able to create powers of force on the planet which reach beyond the planet and shape the dynamics in the solar system increasingly, that's man. This is Vernadsky's conception of the role of man. You eliminate time as a determining factor. Time is a determining factor for animals, but once the human species comes into play, time is no longer a determining factor. The determining factor is the human willful intervention in the process of life on Earth. And then you follow it up by saying that we are able as human beings to gradually take over from the sun, to manage the sun, and to determine what the sun's intensity will be. Because we are now dealing with powers of action which reach far beyond anything that the sun does. Now, a few weeks ago, you made a statement which I think is complimentary, where you said that that the human being does not gain knowledge from the animal part of his existence, from the measurements that he takes via his sense perceptions. But that all that man actually does know is his own mind. Now, I think this is incredibly provocative, and it flies in the face of everything, Jason, as you referenced, everything that has been experienced over the past 100 years in the predominant scientific thinking. Not only are you saying that man is the most advanced process in the solar system, but the way that man actually progresses and develops is a self-developing process. He develops and learns from the action of his own mind. Now, I mean, this is an idea that was iterated by people like Nicholas of Cusa, going back to the Renaissance, where Cusa compares the action of the human mind to a book of law, a living book of law, which is able to read and discover by reading itself what the truth should be. And he uses another image of a living mirror, in which the images of the entire universe are reflected, and that living mirror must only look at itself in order to develop conceptions. So, now, just to say, and I'll get back to this has very interesting implications for the role of classical artistic composition in this development of the solar system. We'll come back to that briefly. Now, why are these things so provocative? Well, they're so provocative because they fly in the face of the culture that's predominated over the past 100 years, and because of what happened in 1900. Whereas you've been pointing out, you had the Paris Conference of Mathematics in the year 1900. You had David Hilbert propose, and then this was carried on and attempted by Russell, propose that we cancel science and we replace science and try to embody science, physical science and physical chemistry in a logically consistent description of the universe known as mathematics. Now, people don't realize it, but that's dominated people's thinking. We have to reverse that. So what I'd like to do is go through here an example for discussion of somebody whose work you cited quite often, which is the work of Johannes Kepler. And what I'd like to do is address an issue in Kepler's work which was pivotal to his discovery of the solar system as a solar system. In other words, not just a collection of a sun and some planetary bodies which happen to inhabit the same general area of what we call our galaxy, but instead a conception of the sun, which is causing the motions of the planets, but not causing them as individual interactions, but which is causing the motions of the planets as a single, unified process, as a whole.
All participants are now unmuted.
So, very impressive talk there. I wish my cult members could fucking talk like that.
We're trying. We're trying.
Yes, we're trying.
But so actually, Kepler is retrieving the knowledge from Pythagoras to understand how the universe works.
Through Nicholas of Cusa. In this movie about the Medicis, starting the Renaissance, there's no mention of Nicholas of Cusa. That's the limitation of your TV classroom. They don't get into the details that reading can get into. So you have to be, Roxy, before you say anything, I have to ask, aren't you a bit fucking amazed at what she said?
Yeah, that we are going to control the sun.
Yeah,
that we can do sun.
Yeah, that stood out to me too.
Okay, so she's saying this will be done with the machines, the Gutenberg and Marconi electrical machines. We will develop our machines. They'll shrink and they'll become more powerful, but she sees it being done by machines, not the mouth. So it's interesting to figure out where's the mouth wisdom come in relation to the technology as it unfolds inevitably. If I brought in Ion to them, I would be kicked off the Facebook page just like the McLuhan people did. But Ion, they would not listen long enough to realize, holy shit, they're saying what Ion's saying. Ion's saying what they're saying with some extra pedigrees. But this is the unique position I have. I know more about fucking LaRouche than LaRouche does because of Ion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And no wonder he falls in love with this young lady. She's parroting him back perfectly. And I doubt if any of the LaRouches in general are in a position to memorize and say that stuff. So they call it the basement. You go down and you take courses in the basement part of his organization. And there was complaints that there weren't enough basement for the new recruits, enough philosophy classes. But she managed to be there when she could take it. So you can see she read that interview she was quoting with LaRouche, her article, very carefully, right? Super smart, literate left hemisphere person. But she looks pale. She looks fragile. She's going to totally probably get cancer in 5 years. You know what I mean? And how's she going to handle the fact that, you know, her cult's not going to get anywhere? Maybe
they don't laugh.
They have to get.
They don't laugh like we do. They don't laugh.
They don't laugh. And she doesn't know she's talking to a double for LaRouche.
Oh, yeah.
She's talking to LaRouche. She's sitting there. That's a double. So our stuff is, she finds LaRouche's stuff shocking, bringing up no time. But our stuff is way more shocking on many levels.